Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for White and White Sense. Welcome you to this week's Talking News on Friday, the 29th of November 2024. As I record this, we are due to set off for the Isle of Wight College within the next hour for our November Christmas meal there. I say Christmas, it is November, and some people may argue that it's not really Christmas yet. However, by having the meal in November, it does mean that we are able to keep it at a very reasonable cost. Unfortunately, moving it into December does entail the word Christmas, which always does put a few pounds onto the price. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you there. Turning to Christmas, however, I'm delighted to say that we'll be holding the mulled wine and mince pies morning here at Millbrook House on the 11th of December. Everybody is welcome, but if you could let us know rough numbers, that would be very much appreciated. We would hate to run out of mince pies. Also in December, we have our annual awards ceremony for our short story writing competition. Call Chris for any details if you've entered, and I'm sure he'd be delighted to offer you a place at this awards event. Finally, a reminder to everyone to stay safe. The weather is getting colder and black ice can be very, very difficult to spot if you're visually impaired. So please, everybody, be careful. Thank you. Lisa, CEO, Site for White and White Sense.
Here is this week's charity news, the 29th of November 2024. Swimming at Medina is on Monday between 1:15pm and 2pm. We have the whole pool, so whether you wish to swim lanes or just have gentle exercise in the pool, you will be made very welcome. The cost is £6 and transport is available, although limited.
Yoga at Millbrook House on Tuesday between 1:45 and 2:45. The cost is £4, including refreshments afterwards. Currently, there is a waiting list for this activity. Please call the office if interested in joining.
Coffee and chat is on Wednesday, starting at 10am until 11:30am. The cost is £2 to include drinks and cake. Staff are on hand to help with any queries and to demonstrate equipment. We are also pleased to say we have the use of both large rooms downstairs, so if you prefer a quieter space, we now can accommodate you. This week, we will be joined by Lisa from the Green Isle of Wight, giving members free energy advice on how to save money on energy costs.
During our coffee and chat, we have our catch-up and feedback starting at 11 o'clock. This is for anyone to express concerns, ask questions about the service, and so on. All welcome.
Thursday, our Mix and Mingle group will resume starting at 10:30am. This group enjoys many activities, including craft, quizzes, singing, and each other's company. There is currently a waiting list for this group, but do not hesitate to call the office to put your name down on the list. Karen will be at the really useful event at St Catherine's Church, Ventnor, on Thursday the 5th from 10:30. Pop along and have a chat with Karen to enjoy a cup of tea and refreshments. Living Well with Sight Loss Information session is on Friday the 6th here at Millbrook House between 10am and 2pm. This is open to everyone, members, carers and family members, but you must call the office and book a space. On Friday evening, we have our annual Story Writing Awards ceremony at the Riverside Centre, Newport. Doors open at 6:30pm, with the evening starting at 7pm. The evening is free and there will be entertainment. Perhaps come along and support the prize winners.
Our raffle is now underway and hopefully you have purchased tickets. There are more tickets at Millbrook if anybody wishes to purchase more or able to sell tickets to family members in support of our charity. The draw will take place on Wednesday the 11th of December between 10:30am and 12:30pm during our mulled wine and mince pie open morning. All very welcome.
Our monthly 100 Club has spare balls available. If anyone would like to buy a ball, it is £2 per month or £24 for the full year. The more balls in the draw, the higher the prize money each month. If you would like to take part in our monthly draw, please call the office. This is part of our fundraising activities.
We now have our packs of 10 Christmas cards on sale for £3.50. This year we have a variety of designs on offer, so please call the office or pop into Millbrook House to purchase.
If you are interested in joining any of the activities, please do not hesitate to call the office and speak to Susan for more information.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Cinema and other ride businesses set for £12,600 facelift. Ride businesses, including a popular cinema dating back to the 1930s, could receive up to £12,633.14 in facelift grants. Ryde Town Council's Community Planning Committee last night decided to go ahead with 2025-26 grant applications to upgrade the shop fronts of 7 shops and venues, subject to conditions such as approved listed building consent and 2 cost quotes being provided. Successful bidders included Boutique, Men Only Isle of Wight, New Carnival, Slice of Life Cafe, Brown Leisure Limited on behalf of the Commodore Cinema and Leo Leisure Bingo, and the Gentlemen Framers. Beauty Salon Boutique at 20 Cross Street requested a 1,230 external ground floor redecoration using existing colours. Mental health organisation Men Only Isle of Wight at 134 High Street asked for £850 to clean and prepare its shopfront. New Carnival, an arts organisation based in a listed building at 13B Union Road, put in a £1,561.14 application for a cosmetic refresh of the building's frontage, including a repair and repainting of woodwork, fitting glass doors with vinyl signage, and creating a new double-sided hanging sign. Slice of Life Cafe applied for a £2,000 repair and repainting of all woodwork to the front of the building at 177 High Street. Gambling and betting company Brown Leisure Limited submitted 2 £2,500 applications relating to the Commodore Cinema and Leo Leisure Bingo at 2 Star Street and George Street. The bids included removing weed and loose paint, filling cracks and damaged render, a repaint in white, rubbing the back of the building, and repaint of black woodwork and a roller door. Picture framing shop The Gentleman Framer at 50 High Street made a £1,992 proposal to replace an old aluminium door described as problematic and unusable to those with limited mobility.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. Battle for much needed new homes in Ryde rumbles on to the Court of Appeal. The battle to build much needed new homes at West Acre Park in Ryde continues as campaigners have been given permission to take a Crown Court decision to appeal. It was back in July that His Honour Judge Jarman ruled in favour of the Isle of Wight Council, dismissing a judicial review case brought forward by Greenfield Isle of Wight Limited, which claimed the granting of planning permission by the local authority was flawed. NIMBY campaigners have not accepted the outcome of the Crown Court hearing, though, deciding instead to take the matter to appeal. Lord Justice Lewison has this week granted permission for the case to be heard at the Court of Appeal in London, where a 2-day trial is expected to take place next year. It means that plans by Bembridge-based Captiva Homes to deliver more than 470 new homes on land at Westacre Farm in a scheme that would secure £100 million of investment cannot progress and look likely to stall for a further 12 months. In August, the developers said they were ready to begin work, with a view to the first homes being ready for occupation in 2025. But that desire seems to now be out of the window, leaving Isle of Wight families on the hunt for new and affordable accommodation even longer. The Isle of Wight Council originally approved the plans for Westacre Park in July 2021, before then approving the plans for a second time in April 2023.
This article from the Isle of Wight Radio, read by Howard, is concerned with a new cider and chocolate attraction heading to Arreton. A planning appeal has been launched over the construction of a new cider and chocolate tourist attraction near an Isle of Wight village. Carlton Developments Limited has appealed a rejected bid to keep a barn, 4 storage containers and 3 caravans at the site of the former Arreton Garden and Aquatic Centre as part of the construction of a new Arreton Cider and Chocolate Centre. The new attraction would be inspired by Godshill's cider barn and the now closed Chocolate Island shop. The Isle of Wight Council approved the attraction in March 2017, but refused the developer's application in March this year to keep the construction buildings at the site looking onto the A3056 for a 3-year period. A planning statement written by the Andrew White Planning Consultancy on behalf of Carlton Developments said the barn was being used to store construction machinery. The 4 containers have housed tools and construction materials as well as staff facilities, including a meeting room, toilets and a changing room. Caravans have provided temporary living accommodation for site workers. County Hall's report explaining its decision in April said there was no robust justification for the scale of storage space proposed. Neither was on-site living accommodation deemed appropriate, with hotels and guest houses in the nearby Bay area including budget options. Other reasons for the refusal included the proposal's detrimental visual impact, adverse effect on trees and hedgerows, insufficient information in relation to protected species, and biodiversity and nitrate pollution affecting the Solent Special Protection Area. Arreton Parish Council also opposed the application in a public comment published in April. The authority said the history of different applications on this site has caused confusion and there is contradictory information. Concerns were raised about the lack of information about wastewater provision. An application for temporary approval for 3 years, given the original application was March 6, 2017, is too long.
Hundreds of knives taken off the streets as part of Operation Sceptre. From Isle of Wight Radio, read by Joyce. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary have joined forces across the country for a knife crime week of action known as Operation Sceptre and recovered 338 knives and made 20 knife-related arrests. Op Sceptre ran between 11th and 17th November with intensified police operational activity carried out to make communities safer from knife-related crimes. Tackling knife crime and serious violence is a key priority for the force all year long. However, the week of action is an opportunity to intensify efforts. The force worked closely with its partners such as the Violence Reduction Unit, VRU, educational institutions, local authorities, charities and youth workers to prevent young people from being drawn into knife crime. Officers visited 47 schools across the districts with the aim to educate young people on the dangers of knife crime and prevent them from being drawn into serious violence. As part of this, the force partnered with Yellow Brick Road Projects to carry out educational sessions to raise awareness of the Legacy Project. They invited a motivational speaker called Warren King along with them to talk about their own experiences of knife crime, to encourage young people to make the right decisions. A knife arch was temporarily set up at City College Southampton in the main entrance of the building for students to voluntarily walk through to detect for any items they shouldn't be carrying. The partnership with South Hampshire College Group provided this opportunity for officers to engage with young people and educate on the laws around knives and offensive weapons. Through education, they can be informed of the risks and consequences, as well as dispelling any myths around knife crime. Knife sweeps were carried out in open spaces across districts to clear them of any discarded or hidden knives. It is also an opportunity to engage with the public and to reassure them. The team in Eastleigh swept the Lee Road Recreation Ground area with the BID's Town Rangers. A total of 8 knife sweeps were carried out through the week, and as a result, 2 weapons were found. Permanent knife surrender bins were made available at all front offices last year to provide a safe way for the public to anonymously dispose of any knives or offensive weapons. As part of this Ops Centre, the knife surrender bins continue to be available to the public, including mobile surrender bins, and collections were made by officers, leading to 319 weapons being handed over. Tactical lead for knife crime, Acting Inspector Christian Lavin said, efforts have been intensified by officers across the force during the Ops Centre week to tackle knife crime in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, which have made a huge impact. We have worked closely with our partners to maximise opportunities to educate, engage and prevent knife crime. It's vital that we are being supported by our partners in health, social care, housing, education and independent charities, as police cannot do it solely by law enforcement alone. These figures can seem worrying, but year on year we are taking more knives off the streets in our communities, which is making a difference as knife-related crimes reduced by 8.6% compared to the last 4 years. We will continue to robustly tackle knife crime with a zero-tolerance approach all year round with our partners to make our communities safer from serious violence. It's important to remember that very few people carry knives, but if someone you know is carrying a knife, you can report it to the police, speak to a trusted family member or teacher, or you can report it anonymously to Crime Stoppers. To make a report to the police, contact 101, or by giving that information anonymously through the independent charity Crime Stoppers, or under their 18 service called Fearless, or by calling 0800 555 111.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Teen Mentoring Programme chooses Isle of Wight for latest expansion. The Isle of Wight has announced as the next location to benefit from an award-winning free mentoring program for 16 and 17-year-olds who are experiencing disadvantage. Goal 17, a national provider of youth mentoring services, has announced its expansion into the area and that they intend to make dozens of free places available via local youth organisation and school referrals up to March 2025. Adults from across the Isle of Wight and South Coast are also invited to join the programme as volunteer mentors, enjoying networking and training opportunities, as well as an unforgettable experience working with a local young person. Brian Hammersley, a current mentor on the programme, said, "We want to shine a light on the incredible potential these young people have and show them that there's a community behind them, cheering them on. Membership is more than just guidance. It's about giving someone the confidence to dream big and the tools to achieve those dreams." On the programme, young people are matched one-to-one with a fully trained adult mentor, and they work together across a 6-session structured programme, identifying and delivering a specific community-focused goal, which can include organising a local event, volunteering, or launching an awareness campaign. Recognising the distinct challenges for young people on the island, Joe Redston, Isle of Wight-based business, said, "I've worked with Goal 17 since they started and have seen firsthand the effect their mentoring programmes can have. With a third of children growing up in poverty on the Isle of Wight, the need for this kind of mentoring has never been higher. Having the support and guidance of a mentor can make a massive difference to the confidence, perspectives, and trajectory of a young person. You can really change someone's life. This is a brilliant opportunity for the island and islanders, so I'd urge everyone to consider being a part of this amazing programme." The free programme is sponsored by the National Citizen Service, NCS, and is designed to create a multi-generational experience that empowers both young people and their mentors. Anyone who is interested in learning about volunteering a couple of hours a month as a mentor, or any organisation or school who would like to access free mentoring support for the young people, you can find out more information and register on the project website www.goal17/global/NCS.
This is Chris, reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Iconic Royal Hotel in Ventnor, purchased by London-based company. Ventnor's iconic Royal Hotel has been purchased by a group from London. London Choice Apartments will now operate at the award-winning island establishment. The Royal Hotel in Ventnor has been a cherished establishment on the Isle of Wight since 1832, and over the years has built a reputation for its high quality of service, accommodation and food. The hotel features 51 ensuite bedrooms, an extensive bar and restaurant with panoramic sea views over the English Channel. The Royal has been independently owned and operated by William Bailey since 1994. He said, "While it is of course sad to have sold a business with which we have been involved with for almost 30 years, now is the right time to step back. We wish the new owners every success during their ownership of this great and profitable hotel in a picturesque location on the Isle of Wight. Most importantly, we would like to thank the staff with whom we have shared this memorable journey for their hard work and dedication over the years." Mohammed Bathich, director of London Choice Apartments, said, "The Royal Hotel presented a rare opportunity to acquire a hotel which is such an icon on the island and is so much loved by its customers and staff alike. We are determined to maintain the high level of service for which the hotel is known, whilst expanding its appeal to those on the island who have not used its services before. Whether it is for a short stay, a Sunday lunch, afternoon tea, or as a wedding venue, we will maintain and enhance the quality that William Bailey has built up over the years.
This article, read by Howard from the Island Echo, is concerned with Godsill Village Christmas celebrations. A festive community celebration is set to bring the spirit of Christmas to life as Godsill Matters, a new residents group, teams up with local businesses, Godsill Primary School, Godsill Scouts, the Parish Council and All Saints Church to host the first ever Godsill Christmas Cracker. This spectacular event takes place on Saturday 7th of December from 10 a.m. to 20:00, transforming the village into a hub of festive cheer and community togetherness. Chris Slan, chair of Godsill Matters, expressed the group's excitement. We're thrilled to see the entire village coming together for this event. Every group has brought their own special gifts to the cracker, making it a truly collaborative celebration. The day promises something for everyone, from bustling Christmas markets to live performances and creative workshops. Highlights include Christmas markets at the cider barn, a vintage fair at the old smithy, Christmas mosaic making at the Methodist Church, Godsill School Christmas busking shows all around the village, and Nathan Stubbings in concert at the Methodist Church, and then a lantern parade with church bells, which leaves Godsill School at 1800 until 1845, and then carols around the tree at the old Smithy car park, 1845 to 1915. This heartwarming event not only celebrates the festive season, but also demonstrates the power of community collaboration. Local businesses, the school, Scouts, the church, and the parish council have all joined forces to create an unforgettable experience for residents and visitors alike.
Island author celebrating Amazon #1 from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Joyce. A Christmas Murder, the latest book by Island author Mary Grand, has hit #1 in the Amazon Kindle bestseller list. In the process, the story was ranked above books by John Grisham, Anne Cleves, and Jill Mansell. It hit the top spot on Wednesday the 20th of November and reclaimed that position again on Sunday 24th November. The book was published on the 5th of September, simultaneously as a hardback, paperback, ebook and audiobook, narrated by Karen Cass, worldwide. It is set on the island at fictitious Bishopstoke Manor, a luxury country hotel. The location is strongly based on Mottiston Manor, which is a National Trust property. Duncan Fern, editor of the controversial tabloid The Daily Flame, comes to the island for Christmas with his family. On the first night, they are snowed in. It is fiction. And next morning he is found dead, seemingly from a heart attack. Amateur sleuth Susan Flynn believes it is murder and sets out to find which of the guests is the killer. The book is the 6th novel by Mary Grand to be published by award-winning Boldwood Books, and is the 3rd featuring Susan Flynn, who has an uncanny knack for solving murder mysteries. I am thrilled to top Amazon's bestseller chart, says Mary. I have always loved Agatha Christie books, and in particular Hercule Poirot's Christmas. I wanted to write my own Christmas murder mystery, and it is wonderful that so many people are reading it as they prepare for Christmas. Locally, the book is on sale at Medina Books in Cowes, where Mary will be signing copies at the Cowes late night Christmas shopping event from 5 o'clock in the evening on the Thursday, the 5th of December. It is also available in libraries, along with Mary's other books. It can be ordered at Waterstones and other bookshops. The audio version is on Spotify and Audible, amongst others, and the e-book is at Kobo, Google Books, and other outlets, as well as Amazon.
This is Chris reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Plan to protect vulnerable tenants and combat fraud set for decision. A new plan to enforce housing rules could be agreed to protect vulnerable tenants and help the council avoid financial losses through fraud. An Isle of Wight Cabinet member will next week decide on a social care and housing enforcement policy amid a rise in fraud and housing-related crime. Councillor Debbie Andre, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care and Public Health, could approve the Adult Social Care and Housing Enforcement Policy, a formal decision-making process to assist enforcement action across all adult social care and housing services provided by County Hall. Enforcement could apply to issues such as fraud, theft, unlawful eviction, failure to comply with housing licensing requirements or housing enforcement notices and debt recovery action. The policy allows authorised council officers to consider actions, including a referral to another agency, civil penalty, licence suspension or revocation, simple caution or prosecution. Pursuing more serious actions such as a licence revocation, civil penalty or prosecution require meetings called authority panels to be held which deliberate on the best course of action. A report by Councillor Andre and Director of Adult Social Care and Housing, Laura Godian, said, "Given the rise in fraud and in housing-related crime, there is a need to ensure such issues can be addressed, and therefore the need for a directorate-specific policy to provide the framework for this. The new policy seeks to ensure openness and transparency, as well as consistency in decisions relating to enforcement. A robust and transparent policy will ensure the most vulnerable members of our community are protected from being treated unfairly. The policy will ensure access to good quality care and support and good quality housing, both in turn supporting the reduction in poverty. It provides a clear and transparent framework for addressing criminal activity which causes financial loss to the council. A decision on the policy is due on Tuesday, December the 3rd.
This article, read by Howard from the Island Echo, is concerned with the residence survey launched for those living in Newport and Carisbrooke. Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council is inviting local residents to help shape the future of their community by participating in a survey that will inform the new strategic plan and forthcoming budget. The survey aims to gather as many responses as possible to understand residents' priorities and aspirations for Newport and Carisbrooke. It covers topics such as public spaces, transport, community events, facilities for young people, heritage and culture, and support for the elderly and vulnerable. Residents will also have the opportunity to share their views on funding priorities and potential adjustments to the council tax precept. Councillor Deborah Matthews, Chair of the Assets and Facilities Committee, has said, "We want to ensure that the voices of our community are at the heart of everything we do. This survey gives residents a real opportunity to influence the future of Newport and Carisbrooke, whether it's preserving green spaces, supporting vulnerable residents, or improving local facilities. Your feedback will help shape our strategic plan and guide how we allocate resources." The survey, which runs for the next 5 weeks until Tuesday, 31st of December, is available online. Paper copies are also available at 64 High Street and Lord Louis Library, and can also be requested by calling the Community Council on 01983 559 119. The Community Council is encouraging everyone to take part, whether online or through a paper copy, to ensure the survey reflects a wide range of views.
Isle of Wight's Richard Green stars in Field Target World Championship victory. From the Island Echo, read by Joyce. Isle of Wight shooter Richard Green was part of the England team that won the 2024 World Field Target Championship. Richard shot 47 on the first day of the 3-day event in Mesa, Arizona, USA. A further Isle of Wight shooter, Andrew Winch, also competed, coming in 69th place with scores of 28, 35 and 35. The England contingent completed in 3 50-target courses over 3 days. After day 1, England had an 11-target lead over the USA, with Wales in hot pursuit. With everyone playing their part, England maintained a lead over the 3 days of shooting. The top 3 England shooters' score counted each day towards the team's final position. Along with the team win, England also came away with world champion Dylan Varney, ladies runner-up Paula Schofield, ladies third Natalie Sheed, men's veteran third David Schofield. Islanders are welcome to try out target shooting at Carisbrooke Rifle and Pistol Club.
This is the second part of the Talking News, read by Tony
and Imelda.
We begin with more items taken from the County Press and the Observer.
Councillors walk out in row over illegal expenses. A row over election expenses has broken out at a parish council, with one councillor labelling the situation anarchy. Following an at times tense Shalfleet Parish Council, November the 13th, the authority's chair, Steve Cowley, fired an opening salvo at fellow councillors Jonathan Hill, Chris Bean and Jackie Laurie in a vociferous letter to island media last week. Anarchy happened, illegal anarchy, Councillor Cowley told the press. At a long-time councillor, the Wellow resident said he was committed to seeing things done correctly. Councillor Bean had broken the law by not submitting information on his election expenses to the Isle of Wight Council's returning officer. The chair added his colleague could not legally act as a councillor as a result. Councillor Cowley's letter said, residents of Shalfleet Parish are due to apologies from newly elected councillors Jonathan Hill, Chris Bean and Jackie Laurie for walking out of November's parish council meeting and disrupting the council's legal business. Instead, I am told, they went to the pub. These councillors should apologise because by walking out, official business was held up. A grant-funded community orchard to mark the 80th anniversary of VE Day has been delayed. Shalfleet Schools PTFA request for a grant for new exercise equipment for children could not be considered. The extent of our unique King Charles III Coronation Avenue in Boulder could not be approved. Shalfleet's parishioners, Jeff Smithers, pushed back on the chair's line of attack, describing it as a deliberate attempt to publicly demean Councillor Bean. He says Councillor Colony was extremely economical with the truth. It seemed he had somehow uncovered a mistake by Councillor Bean by not yet submitting his election expenses. This could have been put kindly to Councillor Bean in a chat before meeting, which might be expected from someone describing himself as a long-term councillor committed to things done correctly. But he chose to wait for the meeting to tell Councillor Bean he had broken the law and legally could not act as a councillor. The Isle of Wight Council subsequently accepted it was a simple mistake with no action necessary. Mr. Smithers accused the chair of a vindictive and self-important approach, which led to the 3 councillors leaving the meeting. He also queried why only a few months ago 4 Shalfleet councillors had resigned, something the chair had refused to explain. Councillors Jonathan Hill, Chris Bean and Jackie Laurie and the Paris clerk have been approached for comment.
Mom's close call after wall collapses. It was a close call for pedestrians when a wall came crashing down in Newport town centre on Saturday morning. Emma Davis, 44, and her 6-year-old son were in the area when the wall above former Fabian Barber's on Pyle Street collapsed. Speaking on her experience, Cowes resident Emma told the county press, "We'd just walked out the back door of TK Maxx and heard a noise which sounded like an explosion. Then we saw the debris and saw a lady jump out of the way. The dust came back as far as where we were standing. It was all so sudden, but it looked like she was really lucky. I spoke to a woman in the bookshop opposite and we both agreed it was a close one. From the pictures I've seen, it looks like more came down after the initial crash." A police cordon was erected at Pyle Street's junction with St James's Street. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary was alerted at around 10:30 in the morning and officers were called to assist with road closures.
Half a month's rainfall falls in just 24 hours. Almost half of November's average rainfall fell on the Isle of Wight in just 24 hours, the Environmental Agency has said. Overnight, Tuesday into Wednesday, the island saw up to 45 millimetres of rain at the EA's Calbourne rain gauge. The torrential downpours led to flooding of roads and, in some areas, even properties. In Gunville, homeowners were left distraught as floodwater tore through properties, turning them into a big pond. The EA said the total rainfall equated to around 40% of what is typically recorded in the entire month of November on the island. Altogether, 6 flood alerts and 2 flood warnings were issued by the EA, including for Carisbrook, Honey Hill on Luckley Brook, and Whitwell, Wroxall, Langby, Aveston on the East Yar. A spokesman for the EA said, "There were field teams working on the island all day Wednesday to minimise the impacts of flooding from rivers and streams. They cleared 15 to 20 debris grills and, where possible, any blockages to watercourses. These included Monkton Mead Brook, Luckley Brook and Eastern Yar. A team were also monitoring the water levels at Monkton Mead Flood Alleviation Scheme to make sure they were ready to deploy the should the watercourse break its bank and pose a flood risk to the community. By Wednesday evening, the EA said the rain had started to move away, but warned islanders to expect to see the eastern Yar continuing to rise as water drained from roads and land. Indeed, a flood alert remained in force for the East Yar until yesterday. Morton Common Sandown, which runs adjacent to the Yar, heavily flooded once again. Yesterday, floodwater turned to ice in some areas as temperatures plummeted. Members of the public can report flooding to the EA's 24/7 incident flood number 0800 807060.
No end to flood nightmare. Distraught homeowners in Gunville faced up to 3 feet of floodwater bursting into their homes in the early hours of Wednesday. Properties on Gunville Road, near its junction with Ash Lane, were severely affected. It is not the first time either. Last year, up to 6 feet of floodwater from the nearby river ravaged their homes during Storm Babette. Among those worst affected is Mandy Tomlinson and her family. Mandy and her neighbours had to desperately move possessions upstairs to spare them from the floodwater. At 3 a.m. my partner woke me up to say there was water coming in through the roof, said Mandy, 49. We looked out the front, saw water bubbling up through the drain, and then it was coming over the sandbags, through the porch seals. Then it started coming through the front door and underneath the windows. It bent the bottom of the front door, the force of it. At the back, water started to pool under the flood defence door, then it came over the flood defence door and came in through the back door. Most of our stuff was already upstairs because we knew this was going to happen again. I've lived here for 24 years, and as soon as the new houses went up across the river, it's turned what we live in into a big pond. The water has nowhere to go. Until last year, I'd only ever seen the water lapping against the pavement. All the land behind the river used to be a floodplain, and now the water has nowhere to soak away. The stream needs clearing, and the trees need taking out. It's so unstable. And if the trees bring down the power lines while we're flooded, we're stood in electric water, which will kill us. Water was coming through the plugs this morning. It's dangerous. It happened last year, and we were out of here for up to 9 months. It was awful, and now it's happened again. They can't say it's a 1 in 100 year storm now. Others to feel the brunt is Dave Byford and his family, Mandy's neighbours. Dave's home, which he had returned to only 2 months ago following last year's flooding, still had a few centimetres of water covering the ground floor at 8:30 a.m. The 45-year-old said, at about 2:30 a.m. we woke up to a leak in the roof, which Sovereign Housing are dealing with. Then my son noticed water coming in through the back door underneath the flood defence wall. Then it started flooding at the front. We phoned 999 and they told us to get upstairs out of danger. The floodwater came up past the skirting just below the radiator. All the electrics downstairs have gone. The fridges are all off, so we've lost all our food. We did our Christmas shop last week, and that's all gone now. We knew it was going to happen again at some point. We've been here 9 years. We've never had a problem until last year when it was up to about 5 feet in the house. A spokesman for the Isle of Wight Council said the council's out-of-hours service logged 1 call requesting sandbags to be sent to Gunville Road, but no other calls were made to report any flooding incidents overnight. Council officers have been out in communities responding. Island roads were also out since 2:40 a.m, clearing gullies in the Gunville area. We continue to urge residents to report any urgent flooding incidents via the Environmental Agency Incident Hotline, whose telephone number is 0800 80 7060. For any other flooding inquiries, contact the Isle of Wight Council on telephone number 01983 823600. A spokesman for Sovereign Network Group said, "Our teams are doing everything we can to support our customers, as we know that this will be very upsetting and we have a significant impact on their lives. Those affected will be offered temporary accommodation. We'll also provide our customers with meals and look at what further support we can provide."
Sites not guaranteed for homes. The Isle of Wight Council leader says he cannot guarantee council-owned sites listed for sale will be sold for social housing purposes, despite calls to do so from the opposition councillor. Although admitting housing is his administration's number one priority last week, Councillor Phil Jordan said the council must seek best value when it comes to sales. At last Wednesday's full council meeting, Councillor Jordan answered a question from Councillor Peter Spink, which probed what would happen to 20 sites County Hall is currently seeking to dispose of. Councillor Spinks, the representative for Freshwater North and Yarmouth, said, "You currently declared that housing is your number one priority and that you, by an executive decision, will be disposing of 20 council-owned sites for development. Will it be ensured that the disposal of the sites will be to registered providers or housing associations, and that the overwhelming majority of the housing will be social housing for rent by island residents on the housing register? Will the details of the housing mix be disclosed in advance of disposal to corporation scrutiny?" Councillor Jordan replied, "If by executive decision you mean by cabinet, yes, not executive decision by me. It's 20 sites, a list of 10 sites we have already released for marketing and 10 sites that we're prepared to be marketed. I can't give you these guarantees since they're going out to the general market and we will be seeking best value. I can't therefore say what the successful bidder for these sites will be proposing or planning to bring forward." Councillor Warren Drew, who represents Ryde South East, asked a follow-up question. "In terms of best value and how that's determined, I wonder if we could have some clarity as to exactly what it might be. I think the point Councillor Spinks is making, which I absolutely agree with, is that the cost of the council in terms of providing houses is something that could go to that determination, the calculation of best value. Councillor Jordan says best value was not just monetary value alone and gave community benefits as another potential measure."
More time granted for firm to complete quarry restoration. Restoration work at a quarry with tens of thousands of tonnes of fill material will continue for 2 more years following a council decision. County Hall has approved a planning application by construction and building materials supplier White Building Materials, seeking more time to carry out land restoration at Hall Manor Quarry, a site previously used for mineral extraction. The firm already has prior approval to restore the land to the south of Arreton with chemically inactive fill material, waste taken from island building projects. In an officer report justifying its decision, the council said the submitted information states that the downturn in the economy caused by rising interest rates and the cost of living over the period 2022 to 23 has caused the slowing rate of restoration for the quarry. Therefore, the restoration scheme cannot be completed by the 2024 deadline. The Planning Authority notes the issues put forward by the applicant and is aware that the rate of development on the island has slowed, reducing the potential for infill material to restore the quarry to approved land levels. As the restoration scheme has been previously approved, and to ensure the site is restored in accordance with approved plans, it is considered that this extension to the timescale of the restoration scheme would be acceptable, resulting in no further effects to the surrounding area, albeit extending the temporary visual impact of the restoration works. County Hall attached 8 conditions to its approval, including that restoration work is carried out according to approved plans and prior conditions. It is completed before October the 22nd, 2026. A hedgerow planting scheme is implemented and waste material imported to the site is chemically inactive. Other stipulations involve weekly time restrictions on when work can be carried out, plans for restricting the spread of dust are adhered to, and copies of approved plans and permission are displayed in site offices for operators and contractors to refer to. Lastly, the council has required a concrete and brick structure relating to a former Second World War military camp and radar station to be retained in situ and reburied to preserve it in the long term.
Dog dirt top priority in new crackdown. A clampdown on antisocial behaviour involving dogs has been reinstated by the Isle of Wight Council. A series of Public Spaces Protection Orders, PSPOs, which regulate dog control measures across the island, are once again in effect. The orders, which govern where dogs can be walked, where they must be kept on a lead, and what action must be taken to clean up after them, were approved by Cabinet members. The decision was made following a full consultation which gathered feedback from nearly 1,100 online survey responses and 18 written submissions. 100% of respondents supported the reinstatement of the order requiring dog owners to remove faeces from public land. 58% agreed dogs should be excluded from selected beaches between May the 1st and September the 30th. 97% supported the requirement for dogs to be on a lead in cemeteries. 96% agreed dogs should be restricted from fenced children's play areas. 96% supported the requirement for dogs to be on a lead on public highways. 98% supported the requirement for dogs to be on a lead when walking through livestock areas.
Isle of Wight hotel tax crook facing extradition. A former Isle of Wight hotelier is set to be extradited from Spain to Jersey to be sentenced for laundering hundreds of thousands of pounds. As previously reported by the county press, Martin John Hill, now of Alicante in Spain, pocketed £350,000 in VAT charges by lying about the number of bookings at his former hotels between March 2014 and April 2016. The 56-year-old's former hotels were the Burlington Hotel in Sandown and the Shanklin Beach Hotel. An investigation by HM Revenue and Customers revealed Hill lied about his takings to evade tax, stashing the money in a Jersey bank account. In 2019, for the 3 charges of tax evasion, Hill was handed a 30-month prison sentence by the Southwark Crown Court. In September, Hill appeared via video link at the Royal Court in St Helier and pleaded guilty to 6 further counts of money laundering. Hill was due to be sentenced for the offences on Thursday, November the 21st, but officials in Jersey have confirmed he failed to appear in court. Jersey Evening Post reported that Hill made 3 transfers in 2017, totalling £262,000 from a UK account with Tesco Bank to a Santander International account in Jersey. He also possessed £34,500 in a Jersey account, money Hill had made fraudulently, and transferred the majority into a Spanish bank account. Hill converted £28,487 in euros within his Jersey account during May 2017 and June 2018. Together, this made up 3 counts of converting or transferring criminal property, 1 count of possessing the proceeds of criminal conduct, 1 count of removing fraudulent money, and 1 count of converting criminal money. The court revoked Hill's bail and ordered his arrest, with the former hotelier set to be extradited from Spain to Jersey to be sentenced. A representative of the Law Officers Department in the Jersey government confirmed to the county press that steps are being taken to prepare extradition proceedings.
Supermarket ban for teenage shoplifter on her last warning. A serial offender was released from custody and warned there won't be any more chances after being banned from all Morrison's stores in the UK. Lorelei Fisher of Snowbury Road in Newport was transported from custody in Surrey to attend the Isle of Wight Magistrates' Court on November the 19th. The 19-year-old previously pleaded guilty to attempting theft from a shop and assault by beating. Liz Miller, prosecuting, said Fisher attempted to steal a bottle of Jack Daniels valued at £34 from Morrison's in Newport on October the 10th before punching a security guard in the chest. Oscar Vincent, defending, laid out his client's recent court schedule, explaining that Fisher was put before a district judge in Portsmouth on November the 13th. Mr. Vincent said Fisher pleaded guilty to the attempted theft and assault charges and saw her case deferred before being remanded in custody at HMP Bronzefield in Surrey. On November the 15th, Fisher attended the Isle of Wight Crown Court on separate charges, with the case being deferred again and sentencing scheduled for January the 31st, the court heard. Mr. Vincent asked magistrates to consider adjourning the attempted theft and assault charges until after Fisher's Crown Court sentencing, so the outcome of the other proceeding is known. He suggested imposing bail conditions, including an island-wide Morrison's ban with an electric tag curfew. Magistrates turned to Fisher and asked her how she felt about the 6 days she had spent in custody at HMP Bronzefield, but the teenager was unable to respond after breaking down into tears in the dock. Magistrates granted Fisher conditional bail, but told her she was banned from every Morrison's in the UK, not just the island stores. Fisher will also be fitted with an electric tag monitoring a curfew set between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. 2 more of Fisher's magistrates' court charges, scheduled to be heard on December the 20th, were adjourned and added to the attempted theft and assault, with all to be sentenced on February the 7th, following the Crown Court decision on January the 31st.
No discounts on new £3 bus fares. The Isle of Wight's ruling administration has confirmed island bus fares will go up to £3 following a question at last Wednesday's full council meeting. The announcement that there would be no subsidies came following a written question from the Isle of Wight Youth Council. They asked whether a discounted pass could be introduced for students and apprentices in response to the considerable new cost of bus travel. The Isle of Wight Council's advisory body for youth issues is elected by young people between the ages of 11 and 21. One of its 2 representatives present at the meeting posed the question. Given that bus fares have risen to £3, the financial impact on the families of students and students themselves will be worsened by this. A round trip from home to school now can cost as much as £12 in a week. That's £60, and in a month that's £240. For a young person, this is a considerable amount of money, so will the council consider introducing a discounted or subsidised bus fare for students and apprentices in order to relieve the financial burden? Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education and Corporate Functions, Councillor Jonathan Bacon, replied, "It is correct that national bus fares have been capped at £3 from January 2025 to December 2025. The current £2 cap will run out on December 31st this year. At this time, there is no internal or external funding available for the Isle of Wight Council to utilise for subsidising local bus fares following the government's decision to amend the current fare cap. The Isle of Wight, like many other areas, is continuing to face budgetary pressures and meeting these through further planned savings. However, following the recent announcement from government regarding funding for local bus services, which specifically reference the Isle of Wight, the council is set to receive additional fundings of around £1.8 million, which can be spent on capital and revenue projects. Working with the bus provider, Southern Vectis, and through the bus services improvement plan arrangement, we will be looking to improve the overall bus services with potential enhancements to include more routes, increased frequency along some routes, real-time information provision, and consideration of further subsidies where they may be best utilised.
Historic Festival is cancelled over farm disease regulations. A historic event has been cancelled due to government restrictions following cases of blue tongue disease. Gilton Market has been cancelled for 2024 as government restrictions made supporting the show animals to the market impossible. The event was due to be held at Salisbury Market on Tuesday, December the 3rd, as a temporary measure as island venues were unavailable. Gilton Market is the island's Christmas fat stock show, where the High Sheriff gilds the head of the champion animal with golden paint. The event is set to return in 2025 in the new building at the County Showground of Northwood. Chair Matt Slegg says, "It is very unfortunate but unavoidable that we have had to take this difficult decision. We have been kindly hosted by Tapnell Farm Freshwater in recent years, but this year they could not accommodate us. The building at the showground was not yet ready, so we decided some months ago, as a temporary measure, to go to Salisbury. Consequently, the movement restrictions were imposed, so that it is now impossible, and we cannot find and license a suitable pre-Christmas venue on the island. The Isle of Wight is currently in a blue tongue restricted zone. The government reported that 3 bovines were confirmed positive in Hampshire on Friday, November the 22nd. The government said 3 bovines were confirmed positive in Hampshire, located outside the restricted zone, after being traced from premises on the Isle of Wight, having moved before the restricted zone was put in place. The premises have been placed under restriction, and the other animals on the premises will be assessed to ensure that there has been no local transmission." Matt said, "The weather is always a challenge, and blue tongue movement restrictions have not only hit the market but also affected where we can sell our livestock at this important time of year. Nevertheless, the farming community is resilient, and we will continue to strive to preserve the island's agricultural economy and work to make local food available to the community."
Drink driver in crash rage fired up after fiancé left him. A drink driver crashed into a car and then deliberately drove into the owner twice. Paul Smith of Hopkins Walk in Arreton attended the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on November 19th and pleaded guilty to drink driving and assault by beating. Liz Miller, prosecuting, said the 67-year-old's victim had parked on Cherrywood View in Arreton to close his vehicle's fuel filler cap at 1:45 p.m. on November 4th, when Smith, in his Ford Focus Titanium, collided with the car and carried on down the road. Following the car on foot, the victim came up to the window where he was met with verbal abuse, said Ms. Miller. The victim went to take a photo of the Ford's number plate when Smith hit the man with his car twice, missing him a third time after the man dodged. Ms. Miller told magistrates Smith drove back to the victim's car and collided with it again before getting out and walking towards the man aggressively, with the situation being diffused by a witness. Police arrived 5 minutes later and found Smith sitting on the toilet, where he became confrontational with the officers after being asked to come into the lounge, Ms. Miller said. Magistrates heard that Smith attempted to leave the property and initially refused to cooperate with an alcohol breath test. After being arrested, Smith later provided a sample showing a reading of 116, when the legal limit is 35. Oscar Vincent, defending, said his client was of previous good character with no convictions or reprimands and a clean licence, adding that it was not typical for him to behave this way. Mr. Vincent said Smith's 3.5-year relationship had recently ended when his fiancée left him. Smith's ex has visited his home, bringing the family dog earlier that day to collect her belongings, the court heard. Smith, in an attempt to stay out of her way, took the dog for a walk and had a drink out. The court heard that, since the incident, Smith reduced his alcohol intake almost to the point of being teetotal and was ashamed and embarrassed by his actions. Smith handed an interim driving disqualification, will be sentenced on January 31st.
Enough is enough after home ruined. To have it done once and then twice and to lose everything is pretty stressful, so I've walked away to start again. The now former owner of the Isle of Wight home, destroyed by flooding, has told the county press. After last November's devastation, Joanne Wright never moved back to her property in nearly 3 decades. A year ago, Stonelands, off Binstead Road, was almost completely submerged with water from the adjacent brook up the upstairs windows. Had the sound of heavy rain not woken her up that night, Joanna fears she could have drowned. In the year that follows, Joanne said she had no help whatsoever from the Isle of Wight Council nor the Environmental Agency. She said all she received from the council was a court summons for unpaid council tax. That was a bit of a kick in the teeth, she said. I mean, we couldn't live in the place. The electricity, gas and water had all been cut off, and then the only correspondence we got was a court summons. After 40 years of owning your own home, never missed a payment, and you get no help whatsoever. Joanne said it was reluctantly paid, but the lack of help, coupled with the fear of another flood, is what prompted her to seek a fresh start. In the last year, we haven't had one, and we might not have got one again, but it's peace of mind. Joanne said her insurance provider was very good, and we got out that way. A few weeks ago, a water-damaged stoneland, which was valued at between £600,000 and £650,000 before flooding, was sold for £114,000, she said. It has since been auctioned off throughout Savills, fetching £160,000. Joanne said, "We'd have perhaps held on and took it to auction, but I think you've got to decide enough is enough and just get rid of it. If it hadn't flooded, we'd got a good plot, but there's always that worry." It was the second time, and in 2 years the property was devastated by flooding following heavy rain in 2021. Joanne said when the home was built around 30 years ago, the adjacent brook was just a tiny tickle. But speaking last year, she said it had turned into a great big river and blamed the increase in houses in the area. When asked for comment, the EA said to speak to the council. The council said eligible taxpayers affected by Storm Babette flooding were awarded a community recovery grant payment and a council tax discount. We followed government guidance, and if owners showed no intention to resume using the property as a sole or main residence in the future, a further reduction was not given outside of the initial 3 months, a spokesman said. After months spent on holiday lodges, Joanne now lived happily in Totland and vowed never to return to Ryde again.
Island mariners bask in fantastic awards success. 2 mariners on the Isle of Wight are celebrating national award success at this year's British Yachting Awards. Bembridge Harbour has been named Marina of the Year for 2024, while Shepherd's Marina in Cowes has been highly commended in the finals. Presented by Sailing Today with Yachts and Yachting, the award category honours mariners which go above and beyond in their offering to the sailing community. Earlier this month, islanders were urged to cast their votes before the deadline for public voting passed. Bembridge Harbour beat off competition from 5 other marinas to take top prize. Owners Malcolm and Fiona Thorpe said, "We are absolutely delighted to have won this award. Since being brought out of administration in 2011, Bembridge Harbour has been rejuvenated and regenerated through substantial and ongoing investment, renewal, development, training and sheer determined hard work. We welcome visitors and rallies from across the south coast and beyond, with an on-site seasonal cafe and bar and a summer events programme, our family fun weekend being a firm favourite in many diaries. They added, "We are hugely proud of what's been achieved so far, and we are looking forward to shortly moving into a new purpose-built admin and facilities building at the Dover Marina." Run by Cowes Harbour Commission, Shepherd's Marina has capacity for 130 visiting boats and 40 resident berth holders. Having been highly commended, Gary Hall, CEO of the Commission, said the team at Shepherd's work consistently hard to offer a safe and modern marina and pride themselves in offering excellent customer service. I am therefore pleased this has been recognised by our visitors. Fiona Thorpe added, "It's a fantastic result and a great accolade for these two marinas and the Isle of Wight. Both marinas have their own very distinctive characters, but share a common goal to deliver exemplary customer service from competent, safe, knowledgeable and friendly staff, welcoming customers with a smile and going the extra mile to help." Made up of 11 categories, the British Yachting Awards is an online-only award.
And now we're moving to the second of our items, White Memories, Life and Times of Eccentric Beach Lady. The fascinating real-life story about a reclusive woman who lived for decades in a dilapidated hut on stilts on the beach has been documented in a book. Britannia, The Extraordinary Life of Olivia Parks, tells the story of Olivia, known as Britannica, who lived in the beach in Ventnor. The book has been written by Matthew Freeman and Robert Trowbridge, with newly unrecovered material made available by Oliver's family, who live in Vancouver. Oliver was known as an eccentric older woman with an unusual lifestyle, but the book tells also of her younger years. Her mysterious past includes a passion for dance, appearances on the stage, work as a chambermaid or servant in London, and a clue which might reveal why she ended up living in Ventnor. Then there's a section about the history of the boathouse, first used by the Undercliff Swimming Club at Myrtle Bay, a secluded part of Ventnor Bridge. Oliver bought the hut in 1929 or 30 and went on to make it her permanent home. She lived there for 28 or 29 years in semi-isolation, and her way of life made her an object of curiosity. As she became more elderly, the hut became more derelict, to the point where it wasn't even watertight. People became curious about her living conditions, and children targeted her by throwing stones at the hut. But concerns deepened about the safety of her home. The stilts were decaying, the timbers rotting, what was left of the roof was leaking, and that's an understatement. Olivia didn't want to leave, seemed to be in good health, and owned the hut. It proved difficult, and a long process to eject her on the grounds that the hut was not fit for human habitation. The final selection of the book sees Olivia moved to a flat in the centre of Ventnor at the age of 76. The county press reported on Olivia's funeral following her death at the age of 80 in 1962. In 1923, Arts Council England funded a project to create a film and zine about Olivia, with the work showcased at Ventnor Fringe and Key Arts. The new book is available at various island booksellers.
Legendary sport faces and voices. The BBC has announced that Gary Lineker is set to leave his role presenting Match of the Day at the end of the season. Lineker will finally depart the BBC after fronting the corporation's coverage of the 2026 World Cup in the United States, Mexico and Canada. The 63-year-old took over as host of Match of the Day from Des Lynam in 1999, having appeared on it as a pundit. He also presented on BBC Radio 5 Live and Grandstand. With the former England striker who played for Leicester, Everton, Tottenham and Barcelona standing down from Match of the Day duties, we look back at some of the voices and faces which became the sounds of a Saturday afternoon for football and sports fans across the UK. Back in the mists of time, when there were only two TV channels, ITV and BBC, the sport was free to view. Grandstand and World of Sport ruled the roost. This is where a nation of armchair sports fans discovered motocross, rugby league and wrestling, and kept up to date with all the results. Subsequently, the presenters of these shows, such as Dickie Davies on ITV, Frank Boff on Grandstand, became household names, along with great commentators such as Brian Moore on the ball and Eddie Waring, rugby league. Harry Carpenter became synonymous with boxing, Murray Walker with motorsport. Waring was one of the great characters of sport commentary. He lived and breathed rugby league and bequeathed the nation several catchphrases such as "It's up and under," as well as on the ball and the ITV7, horse racing. Wrestling was a mainstay of World of Sport. Ken Walton was the commentator, and wrestlers such as Mick McManus, Jackie Pallow, Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks became household names. Many of these presenters gained cult status. In John Motson's case, his sheepskin coat became as famous as him. David Coleman became slightly infamous for a cornucopia of classic in the heat of the moment commentating errors, which earned him a regular spot on the satirical magazine Private Eye. The Eye collated such Coleman gems as "If the ball had gone in, it would have been a goal," and the classic "The front wheel crosses the finish line, closely followed by the back wheel," under a section called Coleman Balls. The magazine continues to lampoon sports commentators, but now the section is called Commentator Balls. Both Dickie Davies and Brian Moore were immortalised in the same song, "She's Got Dickie Davies' Eyes," by 1980s indie band Half Man Half Biscuit. In one verse, Moore is described as having a head which looks uncannily like the London Planetarium. They don't write them like that anymore, but Half Man Half Biscuit are still going strong and have a number of gigs booked for next year. Davies' BBC counterpart, Frank Doff, found a different kind of fame. A skilled presenter across a variety of programmes from politics to sport, his admission that he dresses in women's underwear, took cocaine at a Mayfair sex party, saw his career unravel. These days, such revelations would see his Insta following skyrocket and earn a spot on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. As for Match of the Day, the speculation as to who will replace Lineker has started, with the programme boasting some of the Beebs and TV's best broadcasters and commentators. From Kenneth, "Some people are on the pitch, they think it's all over, it is now," Wolstenholme, who commentated on the very first Match of the Day game, through to Jimmy Hill, Ray Stubbs, Des Lynam, Barry Davies and Tony Gopper. For people of a certain age, reading that roll call of microphone greats will no doubt have you whistling a very recognisable theme tune. They think it's all over? Of course it's not. Or as David Coleman might have put it, someone will come along, open their legs and show their class.
And now we move on to number 3, My View. Let me introduce myself. I'm Shaun Grove, a 27-year-old first-generation shepherdess. I first got involved in farming through the Island Young Farming Club, which I initially joined to make some new friends, and I'm now the chair. I got my own small flock of sheep who graze fields across the island, as I don't own any land myself. In my free time, I volunteer as secretary for the Gilton Market, which is the island's only livestock market, and I'm involved with the National Farmers Union, but my main job is secretary to the Royal Isle of Wight County Show. I really enjoy connecting the public with the island's farming community. Over the next few months, I'll be keeping you updated on the latest in island farming and agriculture. With the clocks going back and the evenings drawing in, we're all faced with a lack of daylight, but the farmers doesn't stop. In fact, with the mild winter weather we've been having, some farmers have been making the most of it, working to drill wheat and other cereal crops, planting the seed directly into the ground before the ground gets too hard from frost or too wet for tractors. The milder weather has also raised some problems for livestock keepers, with blue tongue now on the island, putting us into a restricted zone. Blue tongue is a viral disease spread by biting midges. Blue tongue, which affects all ruminants, sheep, cattle, goats and deer, and camelids, llamas and alpacas, can cause infertility and breathing problems in some animals. Although it's a notifiable disease, it does not affect humans or food safely. On Tuesday, November the 19th, I joined tens of thousands of farmers in London to attend mass lobby events demonstrating about the Chancellor's changes in inheritance tax. These limit the existing 100% relief for farms to only the first million of combined agricultural and business properties. 66% of farm businesses are worth more than this million threshold, over which a 20% inheritance tax will now need to be paid. The day was about solidarity support and protecting our special and vital industry. I was proud to join fellow island NFU farmers and growers to lobby in Parliament with my MP Richard Quidgley, urging him and his party to reconsider the task to save family farms for the next generation and protect our rural communities. Farmers are asset rich but cash poor, meaning their businesses don't have enough profit to pay this tax. There is a misconception that farmers can just sell some of their land to pay the tax. For a lot of family farms, that would mean the business is no longer financially viable, as they would be selling off the very thing that makes money. Selling land may also mean that it goes to more developers, meaning less green space for our public footpaths and a reduction of land for our environment and wildlife. The tax could reduce food production, either increasing the price of shopping baskets or food imports, leading to more emissions due to increased food miles. It could also mean lower welfare services in the food we consume, with less traceability. The UK has some of the highest welfare standards in the world, and we would be proud of that and the food we produce. As we approach Christmas, our young farmers are gearing up for their Christmas party tomorrow, Saturday, which is an opportunity for club members and the wider farming community to get together and catch up before the busy Christmas period. We're also preparing for Newport Christmas Parade, which will be on Saturday, December the 7th at 5 p.m. Keep an eye out for our convoy of tractors and trailers. See if you can spot Santa and his group of elves.
Shopping online this Christmas? Beware of scams. This month, we at Training Standards have issued a warning to online shoppers ahead of Christmas. With the festive season being a peak time for purchases, we are highlighting the importance of avoiding scams. It's important to make sure that we do all we can to stay safe, to ensure that we don't get scammed at what is probably the most expensive time of year for most of us. We want to help customers stay safe by following this advice. Research new companies before buying. Only provide necessary details. Use strong, unique passwords. Using a credit card for purchases over £100 offers added protection. Read the small print, especially regarding returns and delivery costs. Ensure websites are secure with web addresses showing https:// and a green padlock. Don't use the same password for all accounts. A password comprising 3 words, a number and a capital letter takes up to 100,000 years to crack. For advice on scams, call the Citizens Advice Consumer Helpline on 034 54 04 05 06, or to report a scam, call Action Fraud on telephone number 0300 1232 040.
And a what's on? Big clothes change back in town. Clothing retail giant Peacocks has returned to the Isle of Wight town centre after a near 3-year absence. The fashion chain has moved into the former Iceland store on South Street, Newport, just across the road from its former home. Hundreds of shoppers descended on the shop as its doors opened for the first time yesterday morning, and even Santa Claus joined in the celebration.
Leeson Road to reopen Sunday. Leeson Road between Shanklin and Ventnor will reopen on Sunday morning, December the 1st. The road will be fully open to all traffic and pedestrians. The planned reopening follows the completion of 3 boreholes and the installation of monitoring equipment. The deepest of the boreholes reaches 130 metres, which is 426 feet.
And now we go to letters. And the first one comes from Margaret Wright of East Cowes. We attend the Curve in East Cowes on Monday afternoons to play Scrabble, chat or paint and receive coffee, tea with cake and biscuits by a very efficient and friendly volunteers and of course Denise. Red Funnel has provided the group with some funding, and a couple of their representatives visited us at the library, where it was suggested that perhaps Red Funnel could provide us with an afternoon sailing with a cream tea. They came up trumps, and 16 of us on Wednesday travelled on the 12 p.m. ferry to Southampton, where we went to the Signature Lounge. They provided us with a magnificent array of sandwiches and pastries, coffees, tea in pots, water, crisps, and very friendly, obliging staff who could not do enough for us. Denise brought the Scrabble, dominoes, cards and colouring books with her, and most people were occupied on the return trip until the scones, jam and clotted cream with fresh strawberries too were served to us again with drinks. The captain even came down to welcome us on board, and the men and a couple of ladies went up to the bridge for a tour. All of us who went would like to give a heartfelt thank you to Red Funnel and all their staff who looked after us. It will remain a memorable day.
Tina Raymond of Yarmouth sends a letter. My MOT was great, and it's accompanied by a picture of that lady in a very happy mood. The letter reads, Dear Editor, after 3 ambulance visits, they advised me to go to A&E via Fast Track. At 12:30 a.m, they tested my blood and discovered an infection. By 4:30 a.m, I was in bed. I was in Colwell ward for a week. The staff were cheerful and efficient. The food was delicious and hot, and the medical attention excellent. I had virtually a full MOT. I cannot praise St Mary's more highly.
High time we had competitive prices, says Malcolm Watson of Ryde. I refer to the current advertisement for Whitelink, Multilink car passes, offering vehicle sailings from 27.75. To obtain that price, you have purchase in advance 60 single sailings for a car van standard at £1,665, or by 3 monthly payments of £555. The smallest number to purchase is for 10 single sailings at £35.50. Red Funnel, through its big book of savings, offers a day return for vehicles for £54.50, reducing to £49.50 midweek. It's high time that Whitelink competed properly and offered a competitive price for vehicle day returns.
Christine Harding of Carrisbrook writes, Benefit fraud is a way of life. Dear Editor, having lived and worked in London, I learned that benefit fraud is not just tolerated, it is an acceptable way of life for both British-born and those born overseas. Nobody seems to care or take any notice. I worked in an office with a lady called Charmaine who used her national insurance number to claim all single-parent benefits. She used the same national insurance number to work in the office, and surprisingly the Department of Work and Pensions never questioned her. Charmaine's partner, Everol, faked illness to claim sickness and disability benefits while earning money working as a mechanic. Housing Benefit paid the rent on his council flat, which he sublet while living with Charmaine. They drove an expensive car and took their children to Sri Lanka or Jamaica for extended holidays. Having always worked full-time and paid tax and national insurance, I felt angry. However, Charmaine was so naive and did not realise she was doing anything wrong. She told me about the fraudulent activities of her friends. One friend lived in a detached house and drove a Land Rover. She claimed as a single mother with all the benefits, including housing benefit. Her partner had bought the house with a mortgage and gave her a rent book to take to housing benefit. They both lived in luxury with housing benefit paying the mortgage. The Eastern European families are much wiser with their fraud money. The man of the family will live for free with his partner, who is claiming to be a single mother. All his cash-in-hand wages for building work gets invested in property in their own country. Honest islanders and the government do not realise how widespread benefit fraud is and why Britain is known as the land of milk and honey.
And with that, everybody, the session is going to end. And Imelda says, take care of yourselves, don't get cold, and don't get wet. Bye-bye.
And since Christmas is coming up, have lots of fun. Best wishes for Christmas and New Year from Tony.
The BBC In Touch programme follows. And the scaffolding news follows that.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello. It's all too common to hear about harassment, assault and worse against women, and therefore it shouldn't be hard to understand why blind and partially sighted women might feel particularly vulnerable, being unable to pick up visual signs of potential danger. But what may come as a shock, because it's hardly ever discussed, is that many visually impaired women are saying that they can feel particularly vulnerable to inappropriate behaviour when mixing with visually impaired men, a situation in which you might have expected to be entitled to feel safe. It's come to In Touch's attention as a result of a very brave and frank post on a Facebook group used by visually impaired people, clearly aimed at bringing this inappropriate behaviour into the open. Ellie, our first guest, you wrote this post. What prompted you to do it?
It's been building for a while. I've been very aware of the fact that it's an issue in terms of sexual assault within the visually impaired community. I think I always wanted to talk about it at some point, and what really prompted me to make that post was the week before I made it, I found out that somebody had made an incredibly sexually inappropriate comment about me despite the fact that we'd not seen each other for 5 years, and I was so angry and so disgusted. It was the fact that it was a huge problem. It was a symptom of a bigger issue, and I just got so fed up and sad about the whole thing that I wanted to bring attention to it because I think not enough people talk about it.
I won't ask you to repeat what that comment was, but what's been your own experience of this kind of thing?
It's countless experiences that I've had. So from about the age of, I'd say, like 14, I've been touched inappropriately. I've had inappropriate comments made about me. Especially in blind and VI spaces, I've found it quite unsafe, to be honest, to be around a lot of people because of the things that have been said about me and other people that I know. It's anything from someone just touching my hair and refusing to stop to literally being assaulted and not feeling able to speak up about it. I've been assaulted by sighted people and VI people alike. It can happen to anybody. Anyone can be a victim. And I've also been assaulted by people of all genders. It's not just men, but I find that the most traumatizing experiences I've had are from men, unfortunately. And particularly when I'm going to an event that I'm aware somebody who has hurt me or somebody who has a reputation for assaulting women or anyone, when they're at that event, I'm always very much on edge. And I think it's such a horrible thing to experience. It's incredibly isolating and it's not okay. And I think there's this weird culture around it where people don't call it out because either they're scared of calling it out or they don't see it as a problem.
And what kind of things do they say if you do call them out?
I didn't mean it. Oh, I didn't see that I was doing anything wrong. Oh, well, she said it was okay. He said it was okay. I've never heard that this is not okay before. It's very much not putting the blame on themselves. It's saying, well, everyone else says it's all right, so therefore it's okay, which is wrong.
So what you're implying really is people use their visual impairment as cover for this kind of behaviour.
I've heard of men putting their hands out when they're walking, putting their hands out at boob height so that they will touch women's breasts. And that is a common thing that I've heard over the years multiple times. People will laugh about it and say that they do it. And it's very much sort of this whole men's club idea of, well, haha, we all do it, so it's okay, which it isn't. But it's very isolating to go through that and then have someone say, oh, well, boys will be boys, or they didn't mean it, or they never got taught consent, so therefore it makes it okay.
Right, well, stay with this. Connor, you've described this quite graphically in a way as the visually impaired community's worst kept secret. What did you mean by that?
What I meant by it is that I think it's something that many people are aware of and that is sort of talked about behind closed doors that nobody really wants to bring out into the open. So it's something we kind of keep secret, but actually many people know that it's a problem.
So you are aware of people having these kinds of conversations where it's regarded as a joke or just, well, we all do it?
Absolutely. You know, I went to a blind school. I have been around blind people my whole life in various different ways. And it's definitely something I'm very aware of, that I've overheard people say. Equally, I've heard people call it out, and I would say that things are getting better. And I think that's a symptom of wider society. You know, when you look at things like the Me Too movement, it's brought all these kinds of things out into the open. And whilst our community is sometimes avoiding these conversations. I do think it's happening more than it has been.
Now, I know you're not saying that all visually impaired men are doing this, in case anyone is listening and thinking, well, I wouldn't dream of doing that. But I think you do think that they still, that is, visually impaired men as a group, have some responsibility for this going unchecked.
100%. And this is the same. If you take blindness out of the equation, this is about men in society. But I think even more so within a small community like this is that actually if men either go along with it and laugh when another man says something, or equally stay silent and don't call it out, it kind of enables those people who believe it's acceptable. It's like with any kind of violence or horrible viewpoint, if nobody says anything, it goes unchecked. And actually the kind of men who do this sort of thing don't care what women think. But what they do care about is the opinions of other men. And there's a lot of ego involved, and there's a lot of wanting to be accepted by men. And actually, if other men start to say to them, we don't agree with you, like that's not acceptable, I think it does have a big impact. It also shouldn't be down to women to constantly address this.
You mentioned that you went to a school for visually impaired pupils. Do you think there are aspects of visually impaired people's education which don't prepare them properly for healthy relationships with the attitudes to women?
I do. So I went to New College Worcester, and I actually do think the kind of sexual health education we received at the time was very good compared to what a lot of blind people get access to, which is nothing. We did learn about things. We had very frank conversations. The person running these classes was excellent and I think did a very good job. There's also the aspect of when that was, this is the mid-2000s, sort of 2007, 2008. Whilst that isn't that long ago, I do think a lot has changed since in how we talk about things like consent. And I suppose what I sometimes think about is actually if someone leaves a school like that and is then very isolated, and unfortunately we know that a lot of blind people are very isolated, that they're not in employment, they aren't able to access social situations, and so maybe their perspective on these things doesn't really evolve because they're not exposed to the wider world and the wider community. Or if they are, it's in very controlled settings where actually maybe behaviours that wouldn't be acceptable in the wider world are sort of tolerated.
Now, the issue of whether you're believed can be even more distressing if you're the victim of a very serious assault. We're not going into the precise details of Shakti's case because it happened many years ago, it never came to court, and one of the two accused assailants never admitted guilt. But one of the distressing things to you, Shakti, was the attitude to your evidence, to you as a witness. Just explain what that attitude was.
Well, right from the beginning, when I was first starting the questioning, it was very clear that they were trying to get me to justify what had happened, but they were constantly finding fault with what I was saying. For example, I wasn't able to give a description of the male assailant because at the time I had no functional sight. And that definitely went against me. There was one point within the account of what had happened where there was something which could potentially have been a red flag had I seen it, but I didn't. So I then underwent 8 hours of questioning on that first day, at the end of which they said, well, you can't make a statement because you're blind.
Can I just ask you, what did you say to them about why they should accept your evidence, or ways in which, alternative ways in which you could convince them that you knew who the assailants were?
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't able to really vocalise that very easily because I was dealing with the situation entirely on my own the second day. The first day I had the healthcare manager at the college supporting me, but she wasn't there on the second day. And so I felt very much alone in trying to explain what happened because I had been taken to an address of this assailant and I didn't know the street because I couldn't read street names. I didn't know the house number. All I knew was that he was a friend of the female who took me into the situation. So I didn't really have any clear way of identifying him exactly.
But the point was you knew who was involved.
Oh, I knew his name and I knew the relationship with the woman who'd taken me into the situation. And I even knew where he worked and what department, etc. If I ever experienced something like this again, I would not seek help from the police because I feel so not listened to. I felt so unsafe.
Shakti, as we've said, your case was quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
Ellie, you've had this kind of experience, perhaps not as extreme, but far more recently.
Yes. I was assaulted by a sighted man who stayed over at my uni flats because he needed somewhere to stay, and I went to the police station the next day. This was in 2020. This was pre-COVID, and I had a horrible time reporting it. I felt really similar to Shakti, how you felt. I was given assurances that I was believed. I was given assurances that, my evidence, which they kind of put into air quotes because they didn't think I really had any, would be considered. But they basically said there was no point in taking it to trial because there was no physical evidence. I was touched inappropriately and there was no physical evidence to say that I was. I think that the police didn't know how to deal with me because I was blind. And I didn't even find out that they'd closed my case because they sent me printed letters to my address that I didn't even live at anymore. I had to leave uni in my first year temporarily because I was so unwell mentally because of what had happened to me. And they called me at really strange times during the day with unknown numbers, which I didn't really want to pick up because I was worried. It was the perpetrator who had assaulted me calling me. Of course I was worried about that. I told them I didn't know that they were even trying to call me and that they should have left a message on my phone if they were so desperate to get in contact with me. So they closed my case, and I have never trusted the police since because it left me feeling so unbelievably isolated.
Right. Well, we went to the National Police Chiefs Council, which speaks on issues of police policy. We did invite them onto the programme, but we were told that the relevant person to speak on this wasn't available to join us. They sent us a long statement. This is part of it.
Operation Soteria is working to transform policing's response to rape and serious sexual offences. A relentless focus on perpetrators, rather than the behaviour and background of victims, is at the heart of the success that we're beginning to see. We also know that victims with protected characteristics often have less trust in and less good experiences of the criminal justice system, and that the outcomes are worse. The programme takes a victim-centred approach and seeks to support officers to centre the rights and needs of victims from all backgrounds, including those who are visually impaired, throughout the investigation process.
Well, I'd like to bring in Joshua Rosenberg, who's been listening to that. He's a legal commentator and former BBC legal correspondent. Joshua, what are your reaction to Shakti and Ellie's experiences?
Peter, I think what we've heard from Ellie and Shakti is what we heard many, many times from many, many people who've complained about being in similar circumstances, and I'm talking now about sighted people. They have had the brush off from the police. They have been treated inappropriately by the police. Now, the police have got a point, which is that if they're going to investigate a case, they do need to assess whether there is reliable evidence. Now, obviously, if you say you were assaulted by a man in the street as he was walking past, he had his arms out and he assaulted me, the first question the police will ask you is, well, who was he? And if you say, I couldn't see him, I can't describe him, obviously it's going to be very difficult. There is closed-circuit television in some streets, but, there are limits to what the police can do. But if you say to the police, I know the name of that man, I know where he lives, there's no excuse for saying, well, just because you didn't see him, because you were visually impaired, that we shouldn't take the case further. Now, the police, as they say, are trying to improve the way they handle this, not just for visually impaired people, but for the entire community. And these cases are difficult because often it's one person's evidence against another. But it's wrong, obviously, that people should be brushed off by the police simply because they're visually impaired.
Do you think police are getting more training now in understanding the differences between individual people and the way you've just described that Shakti's evidence could have been treated, given that she knew who it was?
Well, I very much hope so. I mean, that statement from the National Police Chiefs Council did refer to people with protected characteristics. Now, everybody listening to this programme knows that that's a reference to the Equality Act, and one of the protected characteristics is disability. And, of course, the police are not meant to treat people with disabilities worse, and they know that perfectly well. Proving that you have been treated worse because of your visual impairment may be difficult, and one can understand how Shakti and Ellie have lost confidence in the police, and the police should be very disturbed to hear that. Whether it's getting better or not, I don't know. One of the major problems is the delays in bringing these cases to court, and victims and complainants simply give up waiting and just withdraw cases, and they're never brought to trial and people are never convicted.
Joshua Rosenberg, thank you very much indeed. So why does this sort of thing happen so much? And why is it apparently not recognised or not taken seriously? Stuart Gore is a chartered counselling psychologist who is himself visually impaired. Stuart, why do you think it's what Connor described as the worst kept secret? Because this seems to be the point. I've been doing this programme for years. We've never talked about it before.
Yeah, indeed. I think this is to do with the stereotype of disabled people being vulnerable and essentially harmless.
So you mean the perpetrators are seen as harmless, therefore people don't believe that they would do such a thing or something like that?
Indeed. And this behaviour gets overlooked. And I think the fear essentially of not being believed within the community is probably one of the biggest barriers, because that could risk potential exclusion from that community.
Can I just ask, are there any, therefore, mitigating circumstances? The idea, for instance, that visually impaired men often don't work, don't meet a range of people socially, maybe haven't had much appropriate instruction when young on how to behave. Is that something people can cite?
I think this is a difficult position to take, really, because getting the idea that from oppression in some way, the abuser becomes the abused, or it's a way of kind of grabbing power where you feel powerful in a community because you don't feel so powerful in the wider community.
Can I chime in with something here?
Yeah, Ellie, do.
So what you just said about exclusion from the community is something I've been thinking about, because I know people who were previously quite prominent within the VI community. Something happened to them, they were assaulted, and they have lost all confidence in being believed in the VI community. I myself have had times where I have experienced really inappropriate behaviour from someone who is known within the community. They're not nobody. They are known to my friends. They are known to people that I know. And the idea of accusing them of something is terrifying, because I would lose access to people around me. But unfortunately, as you said, Stuart, people think of VI people as harmless. They think they could do no wrong, and, oh, poor little VI person that, they don't understand consent. Yes, they do. If someone is taught consent, they should be able to understand it.
Well, clearly there's much more to be said. Ellie, Connor, Shakti and also Stuart Gore, thank you very much indeed for taking part and shining a light. We'd like to hear more from you on this issue. By you, I mean listeners. Also, we're pleased to be able to confirm that next week we're going to welcome to the programme Sir Stephen Timms, who is Minister for Social Security and Disability, who we've invited to answer your questions on issues around visual impairment and government policy. We've already had some great ones. We'd welcome more, and the sooner the better, so that we can fit you in. For those and reactions to tonight's programme, email in touch at bbc.co.uk or leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338. From me, Peter White, and producer Beth Hemmings, goodbye.
Scaffolding and skips news for the week ending the 29th of November 2024.
Newport area, Malthouse Court, Crocker Street, Island Beds 90 High Street, 1 Holyrood Street, 102 St James Square, 5 Holyrood Street, 47 Lugley Street.
And the Ryde area, pavement outside 29 to 30 Cross Street, Solent Inn, Monkton Street, 76 George Street, 6 Newson Street, Bretfred High Street, Beachcomber High Street, 103 High Street, Ride Area Skips, The Lodge, Fairy Roads, Seaview.
Shanklin area, 47 Regent Street, 7 Esplanade, Pencil Cottage, 2 Church Street, 112 Regent Street, 64 High Street.
And the Cowes area, 72D High Street and 73 High Street. Cowes area Scripps, 118 Pelham Road.
East Cowes Skips, 70 Adelaide Grove.
And Freshwater area, Shirley House Avenue Road.